Hello, I just wanted to give some reflections as the daughter of Leonard Tuggy and to just talk about my dad for just a little bit. The main thing that I remember from Dad are these. So, Dad embodied the spirit of these principles of our Christian faith every day. Be still and know that I am God. Be quick to listen and slow to speak. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Do not worry about your clothes, the clothes you wear, what you eat, or what you drink. God will provide these for you and take care of all of your needs. Love mercy, walk humbly, and act justly. And love is patient, and love is kind. He never rushed, he was never late. He was never hurried, and yet he accomplished so much. He affected many people and a lot of change, and he learned continuously. He was truly a deep thinker to the end. He loved and cared for people, not things, and he cared who people were and not what they were. He never said a bad word about anyone. He never complained. Even when he was truly in pain, he never complained. He was at peace with his family, with his friends, and with his God. He was always grateful. He lived in plenty and not want. God bless you all as you think about my dad and as we celebrate his life today.
Hello. I wanted to share an experience I had with Leonard and how in recent years I really grew to love and admire Leonard in a deep way. As you know, Leonard had a strong passion for astronomy and yet was a man of very few words or requests. So when he told me, not asked me, that he wanted to view the full solar eclipse with him back in August of 2017, I quickly said yes without knowing all the facts or experiences we would have, such as number one, I didn't realize that the eclipse viewpoint Leonard selected, Baptist Church parking lot in Goreville, Illinois, was a 5-hour drive directly south and the last exit before Tennessee. Upon finding this out, my son Andrew was quickly recruited. Number two, there would be such a large gathering and the highway going into Goreville would be choked with traffic that we'd have to split up the trip into 2 days, staying one night at the luxurious Quality Inn in Mount Vernon, Illinois. FYI, somebody forgot to tell the cockroaches residing in our room that Andrew and I only paid for a double. Number three, it was an oppressively hot 95-degree day and 95% humidity, which forced Leonard to take a seat in the shade, leaving Andrew and I how to figure out how to set up the telescope. Number four, how difficult could it be to set up the telescope was something I didn't anticipate. After looking at the 852-page direction manual and not really getting any clue on how to align it with the sun, Leonard, Andrew, and I were ready to give up when, thank God, we saw that there were a pool of sun-deprived astronomers there to help us set us straight. Number five, now the experience of the actual eclipse was amazing. It was 3 minutes of total darkness in the middle of the afternoon. Three of us were awestruck and something that in our lives we never experienced and we'll probably never experience again. How cool. All right, number six. Now we have to hightail it out of Goreville, Illinois and get back to Chicago, like everybody else wants to do. So our 5-hour trip down to Goreville turned into a 10-hour plus trip coming back to Chicago. So what did I learn about Leonard during this time? Well, a number of things. Number one, Leonard was 88 years old when we went on this trip, and he hung out with Andrew and I like a man in his 20s, never once complaining about the length of the trip, my driving, the heat, or being tired. This was Leonard's first and only time to ever see a full solar eclipse. And that was amazing in my mind because he had been an astronomer his whole life and never really had a chance to see a full eclipse. That was really cool and exciting for me. Spending 2 days, 15 hours of driving a night in a buggy hotel, was definitely worth the 3-minute event. And lastly, I realized I had a very cool father-in-law, and I would do this all over again if given a chance. So, in closing, my admiration for Leonard, as I mentioned, grew deeper as years have rolled by. His faith and trust in our Lord shaped his attitude towards life and influenced others around him. I know he loved me. I know he loved his family. and certainly his friends. And he followed God's greatest commandment to a T. Love one another as I've loved you. This is what I'll always remember most about my father.
Many people are going to come up here today and say some amazing things about my grandfather. And I wanted to show two that I think had good insight into who he was and what his defining role in life was from his side. He was always the smartest man in the room and the quietest. He was constantly thinking. I felt he was always defined by a constant longing for learning and for purpose, understanding both why and where he was in the universe, both literally and theoretically. For purpose, this came during a last lunch that I had with him in early December. He talked about how fulfilled he was. You could tell on his face that he was content, joyful, thankful, something that everyone could possibly want in life. He was talking about how he saved an alcoholic's life back in the Philippines decades ago. And his daughter, who's now married to a pastor who runs his own church in the United States, reached out to him to thank him. Again, 50 years after the fact. It was just a tiny glimpse into the unfathomable impact that my grandfather had throughout his life. Following the last few months prior, there's been a lot of recognition from the Filipino churches, meetings throughout the fall with their church leaders in the Philippines, that just showed him how his hard work and his dreams of building churches overseas, creating new lives, and spreading the gospel all these long years later were still being realized, and people were still working towards that goal. He was always a man who was, again, passionate about learning and teaching. He was always learning something new. Every time I came over to his house, he was always knee-deep into a book that none of us can understand, always having a page marked off that was full of math equations, and I don't think anyone here listening could possibly understand what he did when it came to physics and astronomy. His astronomy class kept him going through the years, and it was a hit amongst his peers on Mars landing. His classes were always packed, and everyone was always talking about how kind he was and how he went through all the material, no matter how complicated it was, and could make it understandable to anybody. One good story I have that I'll always remember is when he came to my astronomy class in high school. I believe it was my junior year, but at the time he was already in his mid-80s. So he wasn't a young man, it wasn't spry, but his passion that day showed through. His energy was sky high. He had the whole class's attention. The teacher was absolutely ecstatic. I could tell when I told the teacher that I was going to invite my mid-80s grandfather to come teach about astronomy, he was kind of taken aback and just a little bit hesitant. But when he walked in there and showed how he was a natural preacher, natural teacher, and understood the material better than even the teacher did, it was clear that he was in his calling. My grandfather will be known for many things: his ministry, his unending love, and his devotion to his wife and family, but his unceasing passion to learn, grow, teach, and love towards God and his purposes beyond himself. That's what will stick with me the most. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Robertson and I'm one of Dr. A. Leonard Tuggy's grandchildren. I wanted to share a little bit of the impact that my grandpa has made on my life. My grandpa has just been a huge inspiration for me to pursue the sciences and to incorporate my faith in Jesus into my scientific work. I remember when he brought his telescope to my parents' backyard so we could take a look at some sunspots. The fact that I was looking right at the sun, of course through an appropriate telescope, and seeing little black specks across its surface just sparked this sense of awe in my little elementary school brain. Over the last few years, he really liked to discuss apologetics and the intersection of faith and science with me. And it was discussions like these that I continue to also have with a lot of my coworkers, which is just a way that I like to minister to a lot of my coworkers who are scientific researchers like me, and many of them just have never considered following Jesus. Because of my grandpa, I will always consider the pursuit of science to be just also understanding how God's character is revealed to us through studying his creation. He's also just a great model on how to celebrate the language and culture of people from different cultures. We once went to go visit the Filipino Bible study that he led, which is, of course, hands down the best food I have ever had at a Bible study. He was reading a theological book in Tagalog at the time and asked the rest of his Bible study what a particular term meant that he wasn't particularly familiar with. I don't remember exactly what the word was, but I really enjoyed listening to the group just discuss the meaning and etymology and use of the word. My grandpa was really respected for the humility with which he approached people of different cultures. And as my husband and I look forward to moving abroad in the coming months, I really strive to be like my grandparents in how I approach different cultures. Above all, my grandpa loved the Lord. I love listening to him pray at meals and during family Zoom calls throughout the pandemic, as his prayers just revealed a depth of intimacy with the Lord that I have seen in very few others. We could really truly feel the presence of the Lord with us even during those Zoom calls. Thank you all for this opportunity to share today. May my grandpa's legacy of loving the Lord, cherishing his creation, and caring for God's children just continue in all of us.